You're listening to Mission Eve, a podcast that explores the stories of women who are opening the frontier of space to humanity. Your host is Megan Crawford, managing partner of Space Fund, a venture capital firm investing in the space industry. She is a mother, volunteer, founder, and true believer in humanity's future in space. Mission Eve is meant to inspire the girls of today who will be the women of tomorrow, leading our first permanent off-world settlements. Space needs women. Space needs you.
Hello, welcome to Mission Eve. I'm your host, Megan Crawford, and I am thrilled to introduce our guest today, Stephanie Gowell. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Well, let's start at the beginning. Talk about where you were born, where you grew up, and whether or not that influenced your interest in space.
All right. So I'm from a very small town in Michigan, farm town. Parents are high school teachers. I was very good at math. My dad's a high school math teacher. So math was always something we did, right? Like you'd go out to dinner and dad would have math problems on the table for me to play with on the back of my placemat, right? And that's just what I thought was fun. Moving on into high school, I started to take drafting classes because everyone was like, well, maybe you should be an engineer. I didn't know any engineers. I think my dad had a cousin who was an engineer, but I really didn't know any in my town even. So I took a drafting course at the high school, got super into it. We were very privileged to have a local company donate computer-aided drafting software to us. And so I took that class, got very into it, actually competed in state competitions. And
I didn't know they had CAD competitions. That's a thing? Huh?
Yeah, that's a
cool.
nerd badge that I have. I was actually state champ in one category when I was a junior, I want to say, in high school.
Awesome.
So got really into it, kept doing well in math, decided to go to school for engineering because that's what everyone told me I would like. And so I really didn't have a passion for space until that point, right? I mean, space was cool, but it wasn't anything that I knew I could even go into. Engineering wasn't something I could really go into in my mind coming from my town. But I got to school at University of Michigan. There was about 3 older students I knew there from my hometown, and one of them happened to be an aerospace engineering major. I was a little homesick and I latched on to the friends I already knew the first week, and he invited me to a lab meeting on campus for a space lab. Went to it, heard some really inspiring mentors now of mine speak at that point, and thought, heck yeah, I could get into this. Like, I'll join this lab and see if it's something I can really get on board with. And I fell in love with everything having to do with space. I joined the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, SEDS, and worked in the lab. And over time in college, I realized this was my passion in life. And I feel very lucky that even from my small hometown, I was able to find that path, and that one older student was able to get me there without knowing it.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. And so when you were a kid, you said you liked space. Was you liked sci-fi? You read about space? Did you have a space? I had posters of the shuttle on the wall in my room. Yeah. I don't know. You know what I mean? But did you have any little space nerd moments as a kid?
I don't really remember any. I mean, my mom kept a lot, like moms do. She kept a lot of my old artwork and stuff as a child. And I have drawings of space from when I was really little that I clearly did, but I don't remember. And I know I had a solar system and stuff in my room, but it wasn't something big in my life. I wasn't big in sci-fi. I still maybe have seen one episode of Star Trek, which just horrifies everyone.
Yeah.
Right?
You need to get on that.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just not something in my life. It was purely the experience I got on campus with CubeSats and the amazing inclusive culture that I stumbled into with these people. They made me feel like family. And once I felt like family with them, I wanted to keep working with them. And that's when I started to slowly fall in love with space even more so.
And you mentioned just a moment ago these people who are now mentors of yours that you heard speak, and I'm always interested to learn more about things like that are defining moments, kind of in your journey to space, right? So tell me a little bit more about who they were and how they inspired you.
Yeah, one was a graduate student. I think he's about 4 years older than me. He was running this space lab. One was a professor that was in charge of CubeSat satellite work at the school at the time, and they were on stage and you could just see the passion exuding from them, right? Like they meant everything they said. They were there to help the students. They were there to advance science, with space exploration. Everything about it, you could feel it. Like I felt it sitting in the back of the room in a 150 person room, right? It just really rocked me. And I got to know them better throughout the years, and they became my advocates on campus. That professor helped me find different roles on campus and research, and he actually hired me multiple times through my time at Michigan. And then that grad student, even though he's 4 years older, right? We weren't on campus very long together, but he is still a friend I can call at any point for advice. He's helped me make different career decisions at different points, and we like to give back to the university. And so we run into each other on campus occasionally. And I think I recently finally told him how monumental he was to my life, right? And my career path. And he had no idea, right? I had not voiced that. And it was really cool to share that, 10 years later that, you're why I declared aerospace engineering, right? And so they've just been so impactful. I saw that professor at a conference like 6 months ago. We went to lunch, right? And I met his current students, and it's really been an inspiration to have them in my life throughout the years. Sometimes, it lulls and we don't talk for a year or two, but they're always going to be there.
That's awesome. Yeah. We all need that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit more about the work you did in the lab, building CubeSats. Talk about that. Talk about what they are and how they come together and what their purpose was, all that.
Okay. Yeah. So I did a lot of little projects. I'm kind of the overly involved person. So I, as a freshman, did the CAN satellite project called a CanSat. It was a NASA competition I participated in as a freshman in college. It's kind of our stepping stone into the cube satellite. The cube satellite is 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter cube, and they come in, that's a U, and then they have various sizes off of that basic building block. And so we had a 1U CubeSat being built in our lab that everyone wanted to be on because you wanted to get your hardware in space. They're easier to get space on a rocket to go up, right? And it was your chance as a student to say, I touched that. So I didn't end up going over to that team. I actually found a pathway to do a microgravity flight instead, because that just sounded way more fun to me. So I went on a different cube satellite research project looking at booms and how to deploy them on a 3U CubeSat, and became the program manager of that for a year, wrote 2 proposals to NASA for their undergraduate microgravity research opportunity. And I failed the first time actually on my 21st birthday. I will never forget that. We got rejected. And I was like, oh no, we have a design review. How do I tell the team? Like, I don't want to tell them so their spirits are down before our professors review our latest design. It was a good management experience. But then we rewrote the whole proposal in 2 months with the feedback we got accepted the next time, and went to Houston and flew on the microgravity flights there. Based on that experience, I was able to then transition more into the CubeSat lab, specifically doing mission operations and research for future cube satellites. I was never the hands-on person. I'm not really that type of person anyways. So I focused more on mission operations and how to better design the future CubeSats.
Excellent. So, how long were you in school? What was your final degree?
All right. So I was in school for my bachelor's, took me 4.5 years. I have a bachelor's in aerospace engineering. Decided I really like Ann Arbor. I really like still being in Michigan, where there's not much of an aerospace industry. And I could get a master's in 1 year, which seemed like a pretty darn good deal. Yeah. So I decided, okay, I'll stay and get my master's in space engineering, because I get to stay with my friends longer. I get to stay with my family. And I get to just have a fun college experience for another year before I have to be an adult. Yeah. So I stayed and did that, and it was the best decision I ever made. It probably wasn't purely for professional reasons that I chose to do that, but it's definitely helped me be more prepared after college when I entered my first job, getting that detailed experience on how to be a systems architect and a systems engineer that a lot of degree programs don't offer.
Excellent. So then what happened? What was your first job? How did you find it? How hard was it to get your first job in the industry? How many places did you interview? Tell me about that process of getting that first aerospace engineering job.
So I never had an internship until my 4th summer of college. So that right before my last semester of undergrad, I got my first internship. So I was very terrified also about how am I going to get a job? Everyone else has already been interning at GE or Boeing or Lockheed. Like they've all had these cool opportunities and I just can't seem to get in. But that professor kept me engaged in the summers. Either him or another professor would hire me for research, and I kept working that entire time. So I was fortunate enough after my 4th year of undergrad to get into the NASA Ames Academy. It was the most amazing experience I've ever had. I got to spend 10 weeks out in Mountain View, California, right next to Google, Facebook, Stanford, everything's right there. We had a bunch of members from all around the world of our academy, and got to spend the entire summer doing research, visiting NASA centers, really learning more about the civil side of the space industry and what there is to offer, and meeting just like these amazing scientists and professionals from the industry, and finding new mentors and learning more about what opportunities are out there. I went back, did a second summer with them, staffing the program. Again, very fortunate for that opportunity. It was amazing. But because of those 2 summers, I was able to contact my boss at NASA Ames and say, hey, I'm graduating. I still don't have a job lined up. I don't know what to go do. I got about 4 months until this becomes a real problem. And she was a Lockheed Martin contractor at NASA Ames. So she goes, look, I'm not sure I can get you in here. We're not even sure the status with NASA. It's 2013, sequestration hit right around this time I was looking that fall for a job, because of course that would be when I'm looking for a job with the government. And so she called her friends across the runway. Lockheed Martin Space Systems Company is right across Moffett Field from NASA Ames. They literally share an airspace. And I got in for an interview, I think like the first week of December. I was graduating like December 18th.
Oh, wow.
Right? Really stressful. And I had been campaigning all summer for a job at Ames that year, just trying to find an opportunity. So I thought it was going to happen. So sequestration threw me for a loop. So I interviewed with Raytheon at the end of November and Lockheed Martin early December, and compared the options. But it was a very stressful situation and very disheartening, as all the other students had their job offers, right? And I'm just sitting here going, well, I don't want to go work in the auto industry. Like, I got to find a job, right? Like, what am I going to do? The panic. And so went to Lockheed Martin and ended up doing missile defense, advanced concepts and designs. It was a really fun job. I really didn't know what it was when I went in, but I loved every moment of it. And I loved the aspect of helping to design the future systems to protect our country and, you know, my family and my friends and our warfighter. So it was a really neat experience. And it was all because of the network I made at NASA Ames.
Right. You gotta be building that network all the time, man, all the time. So how long were you at Lockheed?
I think about 2.5, 3 years I was there. I made the shift to a different job. I wanted to relocate. And so that's why I ended up leaving, was a relocation aspect. I wanted to live in a different state, and there just wasn't an opportunity for relocation with my current company. Right. So where'd you go from there? I went to Ball Aerospace in Broomfield and Boulder, Colorado. Again, the network. I even had a friend at Lockheed actually even was like, all right, if you're going to leave, go talk to this person. Right. And advocate for me. And then they made it clear, we're not trying to get rid of her, but we want her to be happy. Right. And I was like, oh, that's a good clarification.
That's important.
Looks really bad when they're like, you should talk to her. So between that and a good friend of mine from school, another mentor, he introduced me to a friend a couple of years prior that worked at Ball, and I reached out to her, and she actually went to bat for me. She went to multiple VPs, told them I was applying because she was doing well at the company herself. So I actually interviewed with one of the VPs
Wow.
for my position coming in because
Ball's not a small company, so I don't imagine that's normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I will say the VP I interviewed with, I was sold. I met him and I was like, I want to work for this guy.
Yeah.
He is a good person, right? And that's what matters to me, right? And I was like, I can work for this company if they have someone like this guy in a leadership position like this. Like it's a done deal. If I get the offer, I'm taking it. And I went there and was a systems engineer. I got to work various programs. The one I can mostly talk about is I got to work on the Wide Field Infrared Survey Telescope for NASA. Ball has the contract to do the Wide Field instrument. We had a study for it, and I got to work on our study phase and our proposal. And it was a really neat experience to get back into the space side, not just
not missiles.
Yeah. So it was my first dipping my toe back in. So from the systems engineering position, I transitioned into an advanced systems manager at Ball, which is kind of like a technical business development type. I went into more customer interactions, writing proposals and strategy on where we think the roadmap for our technology should be headed. A really, really neat role. It was a good transition from systems into that because it's a big picture type of thinking.
Excellent. And so tell us about what you're doing now.
I recently accepted a role with Atlas Space Operations as the Director of Commercial Sales and am doing similar stuff to my Advanced Systems Manager days.
So what advice would you give somebody who's trying to break into this industry? Maybe somebody who wants to be an aerospace engineer or is trying to find their first aerospace engineering job. What advice would you give them?
I think getting involved in volunteer organizations or labs on campus was really beneficial for me. I would not have any of the roles I have gotten without my service to different organizations like SEDS or the Space Frontier Foundation or the lab I ended up leading at Michigan. They were able to teach me more about space. I was able to get my toes wet without fully committing and seeing where's the right path, right? And I think even with that, I still didn't fully understand the scope of the space industry, right? I had my engineer hat on. I can go be an engineer and that's it. And I think that organizations like Space Frontier Foundation helped me see there's a lot more than engineering going on in the space industry. We need all types. And if you're not an engineer or scientist, talk to someone in the industry. We need everyone. We need business. We need HR. We need marketing. We need everything. And so just having that conversation with maybe someone in the industry, whether or not you know someone, reach out to someone on LinkedIn. I think the space industry, for the most part, is pretty welcoming and nice and wants to get more people involved. We want everyone to help this.
What was your very first job? Like your very, very first job?
The same week got 2 of my very first jobs, or I guess 3. I was a carryout at a local supermarket that had 8 aisles. So I carried people's groceries to their car.
Excellent.
It was 1950. I also through a man at my church when I was 18 got an internship at the only engineering company in our town working on fire trucks.
Oh, cool.
He heard I was good at drafting through my parents randomly at church. I didn't really know him. He referred me and I got a summer internship fresh out of high school before college, designing fire truck helmet storage because there was some new regulation at that point that they couldn't wear their helmets while the truck was moving.
Oh,
so I got to work on that. Those are my first 2 jobs. And I think that same summer I was teaching dance to preschoolers.
Oh, so fun. Yeah.
Very diverse first summer of work.
Yeah. And then through college, did you work at all or were you just solely focused on the lab?
Well, I ended up getting paid through labs.
Right.
Mostly,
Excellent.
right? And my parents, I'm really fortunate that my parents were able to support me in a lot of ways throughout high school and college, and that they said, your focus is school. Your focus is not to make money right now. Like you do your spending money, we've got the rest, sort of thing, right? And or you have student loans or you have whatever, right? And so I was very fortunate with that, but I was able to, after a couple of years on campus, get paying lab jobs. And I also worked in the student affairs office at the College of Engineering at Michigan. So I was the assistant to a lady that helps students who are going through rough times figure out the resources on campus to help them. And
Excellent.
That job meant the most to me, I think.
Good. Yeah, it's always nice to serve, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So the space industry is pretty unique. You've spent a lot of time in it, but what do you think are the unique challenges from having a career in this industry, and how have you kind of overcome those?
I think for me, the hardest part in the space industry is, it's going to sound probably really silly, no one gets it in my personal life, right? Like my friends and my family that aren't fellow space nerds don't get what I do. I try and explain it, and it's just, I'm not simplifying it in the right way, right? And so I'm someone who wants to share what I'm doing. I want to tell the people I love what I'm up to. I want them to understand and like be proud of me too, right? And I know that my family is, but it's difficult at times not being able to fully convey the magnitude of what I'm working on, or just the full scope of what it is. Like I'm working on a cube satellite that's going to collect data on auroras, right? Like that's cool, right? And unless you're a space nerd, you might be like, oh, wow, that's cool. Yeah, you're working on a satellite.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that has always been something that I've struggled with, is how to explain what I'm actually doing to them.
Yeah, I totally get that one. I have similar problems, and it's funny now that I work more kind of on the financial side of this industry. That's super easy to explain, right? Right. When I used to work in asteroid mining, that one was a little harder to explain. That one took a little bit more time and effort to explain. So I totally get you, totally there with you on that one. So what are your long-term career goals? Where do you see yourself in 10 years, 20 years? What's the future look like for you?
I feel like these change every 5 years for me as I learn more about myself and the industry, right? I think 20-year goal right now for me, I would love to be running my own company, or a VP somewhere, right? I like the leadership and the helping other people part, right? I don't want to just have my head down working at a computer engineering. I want to be mentoring people. I want to be shaping the culture of a company and the direction of the company, because I think as a company grows and the culture changes, it is very crucial to maintain that inclusive environment and that everyone feels that they can share stuff and that that they are valued. And I think that that's where I can add the most down the road as I grow as a leader and a technical person in the industry.
Excellent. I love that. As you are well aware, most of us in this industry are extremely passionate about what we do. We're very passionate people, and that tends to spill over, I think, into the rest of our lives. So I'd love to hear about the things that you do outside of work that are either space related or other volunteer causes, advocacy groups or industry associations. What else do you do besides work?
Well, I mean, I'm involved in a lot of space stuff, so it seems like I'm also doing work outside of work. I'm very involved in the Space Frontier Foundation, fellow board member with you.
Yeah.
And I have been involved for years volunteering in various ways. And
tell us about the Space Frontier Foundation.
Okay. So the Space Frontier Foundation is a advocacy group trying to advocate for the settlement in space and enabling our advocates in the industry to advance the settlement. I originally started as an attendee as a student, just kind of checking it out, seeing what it was. I met people at it that was like, they're kind of cool. Maybe I want to come back to this next year. Like, I think these might be my people. And started volunteering.
I know that feeling. Yeah.
As we're still involved.
All these years later. Yeah.
So I started volunteering in the ways that I could at various points in life. And I got nominated to the board about a year ago and have really enjoyed the time to help shape the organization and empower our advocates. I also am on the board of the College of Engineering at University of Michigan. That was a recent transition for me. I believe officially I started fall of 2018. Not exactly sure. My memory is a little rough right now, but I twice a year go back for Michigan Alumni College of Engineering board meetings. And we help shape the College of Engineering as best we can and listen to the college where they have needs and help fill some gaps and help the students grow as best as a board member you can. I'm also very involved in AIAA, the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. I used to be the San Francisco chairwoman. I was the vice chair. I was the programs director all over different years. I wanted to make more friends in the industry fresh out of college, and I started doing that and got very involved. Currently, I'm on the Small Satellite Technical Committee. My CubeSat passed, coming through again, and helping out with that organization. Other than that, side of space stuff, I play in a dodgeball league when I have the time. It's a very weird hobby.
Fun. No, that's great. I love it.
It's actually with a lot of Lockheed Martin engineers and another ball employee.
That's fun.
Right, that I knew back there. So it's a bunch of friends from different organizations I've been a part of, and it's a good time. We've been champs 3 times when I've played of Denver.
Were you involved in the dodgeball tournament that happened at Smallsat last year?
No, I didn't know about it.
We'll have to talk about that offline.
Yeah, I would love to have been involved in that.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. Great. So, anything else? Did you want to mention anything else? I kind of interrupted you there.
No, you're fine. I mean, the only other thing that I can think of as like a hobby that's not just me like recharging at home is I take adult tap lessons. I grew up dancing a lot.
Excellent.
And through various health reasons, I can't do a lot of the styles of dance I used to anymore. But tap is something I can do like 90% solutions on. So I go to an advanced tap class when I have time in Denver, and it's super fun. It's really fun to reignite that passion I had as a child and take some time for me.
Absolutely. Love it. So you work for, you volunteer for, you're on the board of an organization that's focused on space settlement. I'd love for you to tell me what your vision of humanity's future in space is.
Oh man, I don't know if I've got a good one right now on that one. It's really a deep question.
Take your time.
I feel like this changes for me a lot, right? Like it depends on the more data I get. Sometimes I course correct with what I think it should be. I know what I want. I'm not sure if it's the right thing. Like I would love to settle the moon or Mars. I don't care which one.
You're agnostic.
Yeah, I don't care.
There's a lot of, people get real competitive, moon versus Mars,
right.
But you're agnostic.
I don't care one way or the other. I don't have a horse in that race. I just want to go settle another body in our solar system, and I want to be alive for that. I want to be there for it. That's kind of my personal take on it.
Excellent. So, and that answers the last question that we always throw out on the podcast, which is, when it's time to settle space, will you go?
Yes. I say yes. I don't know, like, if that becomes a real thing, we'll see if I get cold feet. But right now, it's a definite yes.
Definite yes. Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Mission Eve is a production of the Center for Space, Commerce, and Finance, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to educating entrepreneurs and investors about their respective challenges and opportunities as it relates to space. Megan Crawford has been your host and executive producer. Aaron Pagel is the executive director for the center and producer and editor for this episode. Marketing and communications for Mission Eve is managed by Nikki Martinez. Theme music has been composed by Liz Fole. If you'd like to support this podcast, please visit patreon.com/missioneve to become a monthly subscriber. We have multiple tiers available with benefits like personalized thank yous, access to limited edition t-shirts, opportunities to engage with our interviewees via online Ask Me Anything sessions, and small group gatherings with Megan Crawford when available. Any support you can offer will go a long way to helping us continue to tell the stories of the women who are making life in space a reality. Please follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Center for Space, Commerce, and Finance, Twitter at CSCF_nonprofit, and LinkedIn at linkedin.com/company/CSCF. Thank you very much for listening.